it's just priceless. The effect it has had on the middle school and high school guidance departments, which were already really strong departments, but being able to help reduce freshman failure because you have a dedicated individual to that transition. Enhancing the student experience at both the middle school and high school, because anytime Mrs. Emery, if I say, hey, Miss Emery, I'm interested in your request, it's done. We're going. She gets it all taken care of because she has that time to focus in on those tasks for the 8th grade and the 9th grade. And then just total efficiency. For instance, here is at the beginning of the school year at the high school, that's a high time for seniors in college applications and so on and so forth that dominate usually the 2 positions that have traditionally been there. So then who gets kind of left behind as their, focus is on those seniors? Well, the freshmen, right? Well, not anymore because of the position that we have. But I put at the bottom here, position is just a position. It's the person that really unlocks the potential. And I'm going to tell you, we hit a home run with Mrs. Emery right next to us. She is, I'll tell you a story. Last week, we knew this was coming. Her and I had talked about this presentation, probably 5 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, somewhere in there. And I knew that she had just gotten done completing Career Quest last week. And she, the very next day, went to 5-star with some freshmen or with some high schoolers. And I sent her a text because I didn't see her. I said, hey, remember we have a presentation on Monday. Let me know if we need to sit down and finish this thing up. Her reply within 5 minutes, I've got most of it done. I can share it with you tomorrow. Her ability to be efficient, not ever lose anything. She just cares so much for the kids and wanting to make sure that she never drops anything. She's been great. So that's what we do at the middle school, and that's the importance of her in this role, and hope we never see it go away. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Josh, I have one question for you. So when you guys finish the original assessments of the kids, do the parents get some sort of report that says your child is extremely interested in this, or is it just when they find out that they're going on this particular trip to focus in this particular area? Is that kind of?
Yeah, we did not send anything to parents. It would be a lot of word of mouth from the kid. Hey, I'm going to go to the Elkhart Career Center.
Yeah.
And in Zello, they can show you what they got. So
Okay.
You say, hey, pull up
It's
Zello
interesting.
for me. See what did your matchmaker say? Once we're in the classrooms and they've completed that, they can go back in and they'll be able to show you, and you can go through the different things with them in the Zello account. Wanted to be able to show you guys, but it won't have but yeah, so it is, you can have them log in at home and they can show you everything.
That's great. Thank you.
Data-wise, I think this is a year where we can really maybe start to look at to see how is this freshman group this current year transition in comparison to others. This year's freshman was the first group to go fully through what you just saw, all the way to site visits. So here's to pull that information sheet.
Yeah, I saw a couple of familiar faces on that screen. Thank you very much. Moving on to items of business. First, our financial report for the year ended June 30th, 2024. Raymond and Associates will present an overview of the district's financial status.
Oh, I guess I could have left that down. Sorry. I was thinking financials, we need the lights up bright. Sorry.
So I'm going to briefly walk you through the reports. We're going to start on page 1 of the larger bound report in front of you. We'll look at the opinions paragraph. This is an unmodified opinion. This is the highest opinion we can render as auditors. It means that your financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. We'll skip a few pages. Page 6. So this is management's discussion and analysis. If I was going to spend time reading the report, I would focus on pages 6 through 13. It just provides a good overview of the district as a whole. So we'll look at the financial highlights, particularly the general fund. So unassigned fund balance for the general fund was $9,992,505. Change in fund balance for the general fund was a positive $2,017,784. And then currently you have general obligation bonds outstanding of $4,808,549. We'll skip a page, page 8. We'll look at the financial and the balance sheet or the statement of net position for the district. You'll notice the total net position is a deficit, $10,654,457. It's primarily the result of the net pension liability that's recorded. And this table just gives a good year-over-year comparison. Next page, page 9. We'll look at part of the first paragraph there. So the cost of the district's governmental activities was about $29.4 million. However, $22.2 million was funded by the state of Michigan as grants and contributions. The amount that district taxpayers ultimately financed was $4.3 million. $0.6 million was paid for those who benefited from the programs, and $10 million was funded by other governments and organizations who subsidized certain programs with grants and contributions. So the chart there shows your revenues minus expenses, and then your change in net position, which was a positive $8,299,929. We'll go to page 10. We'll look at the first paragraph there, the governmental activities. So the main reason for the increase in overall net position was due to changes in the net pension liability. So there's large swings that go into that every year based on investment performance. Operating grants and contributions increased by about $1,134,000 due to additional categorical funds, as well as additional CTE dollars from the local ISD. Grants and contributions not restricted to specific programs increased by $951,000, primarily due to an increase in the foundation allowance for the state of Michigan of $458 a student. We'll look at the general fund, middle paragraphs there. Unassigned fund balance of the general fund, again, $9,992,505, which is about 33.3% of the general fund's annual expenditures. The increase was $2,017,784, primarily as a result of increased per pupil funding, increased interest income, and recognition of grant revenue to offset expenditures that were historically covered by other general fund revenues. It's primarily the COVID money that's being recognized. We'll get into the actual financial statements, page 16. Highlight the net pension liability right in the middle of the page. $42,847,713, which drives the total deficit net position of $10,654,457. We'll look at the next page, page 17. So revenues minus expenses resulted in a positive change in net position of roughly $8,300,000. Next page, page 18, we'll look at the general fund, the unassigned fund balance, third to bottom line there. This is that 33.3% number I talked about earlier, the $9,992,505. Go to page 20, look at the revenues minus expenditures for the general fund. So you notice a positive net change in fund balance of roughly $2 million. You'll also notice about 5 lines up, there was a transfer out of the general fund of $1,583,929. That was to fund the QZAB bonds that were outstanding and an additional transfer to the Public Improvement Fund for future improvements. We'll get into the notes to the financial statements. We'll look at page 37. Again, that's highlighting the transfer out of the general fund for the bonds and the transfer to the Public Improvement Fund for future capital projects. And then one thing you won't see in the report this year is on page 15, there was a subsequent event. You issued bonds. So those don't show up in here. So your liability is going up, but you're also, expanding the district and improving the buildings. So you issued about 17.8 million in bonds. Are there any questions on this report? Okay, we'll move to the next smaller bound report. We'll be on pages 2 and 3. So when the district spends over 750,000 in federal funds, which I imagine probably has happened every year for the last couple of years, it triggers a single audit. So there's additional federal requirements we have to go through. So the district spent $2,098,175. Of that, we tested 866,408, which was the child nutrition cluster. And then if you're looking for a good summary of the single audit itself, it's on page 12. Talks about which programs we did, what kind of findings we came across. And then we'll go over the findings, which will start on page 13. So during the audit, we identified material audit adjustments as part of our reconciling procedures. So we're going to ask that the district start reconciling all year-end balances for us so that we don't have to post those kind of entries. I will say there were no significant adjustments to cash, which I know was on the prior year report, which is a good step in the right direction. Page 14. The preparation of the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, those two findings kind of go hand in hand when there's material audit adjustments. And then we have adjustments to federal revenue and federal receivables, results in the CFA prep finding. We're going to work with the district to get a good template for next year, and hopefully this won't be repeated. Page 15, independent review of journal entries. So we noted there was no review of journal entries. So best practice is segregation of duties. One person prepares and one person reviews and posts. So you just want to make sure there's two people involved in that process. Page 16. There's a finding for procurement, suspension, and debarment. You're supposed to be doing checks on all vendors over 25,000 to make sure they're not debarred, and you have to retain that support. It's a simple test just on sam.gov. And then page 17, we noted one of the 3 meal claim reimbursements we tested for food for child nutrition didn't match the count sheets, so the amount was underdrawn. Again, there's a breakdown in internal control there where there's not someone reviewing and approving the counts to the application. And then if there's any questions, I can try and answer those now on this report. Okay, we'll move to the next report. The stapled copy in front of you, we'll look at, this is all boilerplate language. It talks about our responsibilities as auditors, our responsibility as the district. Primarily what people want to know about is our comments and recommendations, which are not considered significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. This is just stuff that warrants your attention but isn't as significant. I would say the most significant one on this page is the athletic ticket sales. There are not tickets being sold currently, or tickets handed out, so there's not a reconciliation of how much comes in at the gate and how much is getting to the business office, which is a concern. I would recommend that you start using tickets, beginning and ending ticket number, that there's reconciliation in place, or go to all electronic payments for athletic events. One of the other comments was fidelity bond coverage. So as your insurance renews this year, just take a closer look at your employee dishonesty piece. It's currently set at 100,000. Most frauds at a government are north of $1 million. So just something to consider as you look at the risk the district's willing to take. And then last comment on there is periodic reviews of user access. So this is people that have access to the financial statement software. So to make sure that their rights are in line with their job responsibilities. And that's something that came from our new IT form, which would have been new this year anyways. So and then if there's any questions, I can try and answer those now. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That doesn't require a vote or anything, right? It does? To accept the, is there a motion to approve to accept the financial report of the year end June 30th, 2024?
So moved.
Support.
Is there any questions or discussion regarding? Doesn't need to be a roll call vote. Mrs. Niemeyer,
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Kimbrell, Mrs. Friends,
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Harris, Mrs. Anson,
Wait.
Yes.
Mr. Overmeyer,
Yes.
and myself, yes.
I'll help you out,
Been a long week. Thank you.
Chelsea. There you go.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it, Kevin. Moving on to Spring Count Day. It is recommended that the February Late Start Wednesday revert to a full day of instruction as it is scheduled on Spring Count Day. Is there a motion to change and go to a full day?
So moved.
Support.
Is there any questions or discussion regarding that?
We appreciate the explanation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you want to?
So I sat down with union leadership. We talked with the administrative team. Just looking at that month, there wasn't a good time to move it, and we have a very thorough student count person who goes over all of our student count information. And with this being a change, they just recommended that we not have a late start date on that day to make sure that there was no issue with any of the funding that were awarded. So both the union and administration were in agreement with that. We will just look to make sure none of those dates fall on the big, count dates or things like that next year for the calendar.
Thank you. Was there a motion in support for that?
We already,
Okay.
we already did. Yeah.
Everybody good? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion passes. Moving on to the review of the new board member onboarding process and procedures. Did everybody have a chance to look over everything? Were there any additions or?
The only thing that I could see that might be helpful is I know that there was a list of meeting dates, but maybe some of the other things that are not a routine meeting that were invited to, like the Teacher Appreciation Day and the award ceremony that just happened and graduation events.
Maybe like a detailed district calendar, what we
Yes.
have of more of those dates that show up on kind of our internal district calendar for different
optional
events.
attendance. I like that
Yes.
idea, Natalie. I hadn't really thought about that.
Just because sometimes,
These are all open. I mean, anything's
Yeah.
open to you, but these are
Yes.
things that if board members could.
and sometimes, I mean, they're great about getting invitations out, but sometimes it's only like a week or two in ahead. And so knowing, even if we don't have the set date yet, like, hey, late October is usually the student.
Yeah, or even there's a
Awards thing.
kickoff luncheon.
Yes,
prior to
things
school
like that.
start. Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that.
That is a good idea. I, in my mind, the these will all be living documents that we
Yes.
can
Right,
add to
yes.
at any time.
Yep.
Like I
Right.
emailed out Fenton's onboarding process to you guys earlier. There are a lot of links to a lot of useful information that I think could live in that, the EPS board resources. But
I didn't get a chance to look at that yet,
oh,
but
it's fine. Like I said, I feel like this is a
Yeah,
living
I
document.
agree.
And I think you all are editors. If you're not, let me know. And then you can just, as you find things, even just drop them in there because then everyone can review it too. So.
Yeah. I think our next step in this process is reviewing our policy regarding onboarding because the policy doesn't match what we're doing right now. And the policy doesn't have to be specific to say we're doing these things. It just needs to say what we're doing.
And the ad hoc committee had picked out some policies to recommend to the policy subcommittee meeting. So
Okay.
I've added that to our agenda when we
Mhm.
meet next month to go over that.
Okay, perfect. Moving on, our discussion of the Neola bylaw review. How is everybody doing with that? Justin and Kevin weren't here and I thought more about it. So we decided at our work session that we're going to do a review of our policies. Chris from Neola suggested that we start with our bylaws section, and we were just going to read through all the policies. If anybody saw a policy that they felt needed renewed, touched on, if they had any questions, they were going to send it to Cheryl, and then we could go over it, either talk about it at a board meeting, and then review the policy at the policy committee and go over it. The bylaws section is pretty long. And I felt bad even moving on from the bylaws section since Kevin and Justin hadn't been involved in that. And then when I thought further on it after we met and talked about it, maybe we should hold that over till the January meeting. So we are going to get at least one new board member. So they can be part of that process. And it's pretty long, so
It gives people,
I thought we could just extend this out into January if everybody was good with that.
If as you're going through them, you just want to send to Cheryl any ones that you're kind of flagging already, because then what Chris said at the work session was he can go back and show what the
original.
options originally were. So some might not have any options. It might be this was the law and this is why it's written the way it is. Others might have had options that, depending on who made up the board at the time, could have had reasons for selecting. But Cheryl and Chris can get that history part.
Yeah. So I just wanted to.
So do we have a January work session?
No, we have a January meeting.
Okay, because we were going to do this at work session, I remember. What was the
Do we?
plan?
I am not even sure. If we have a January work session scheduled? I know we didn't have one in December.
We did for January.
I can look.
January board meeting itself is early.
Right.
And it's
It
long.
is. I think there is one
Because there's
later in
Well,
January.
nice.
But there's also MLK Day, which is on a
Work session.
on the 27th.
Yeah.
So it's flip
So,
flopped from
yeah.
the board.
Okay,
And
so
Yeah.
we'll work on them on the 27th.
Yeah. Yep. Sound good?
I just wonder, I don't want Cheryl to be completely bombarded. I just almost wonder if we should do it almost like a homework assignment, like we review this number through this number. All feedback goes to Cheryl for this grouping, and then maybe move on to the next one. So she's not getting hit with this one multiple times, and then she's kind of already moved on to this section. I just wonder if there's a way to
Well,
organize it.
I think if somebody emails her one
That
of our
makes sense,
bylaws, she would pull it and she would already
Just
know that
file it within that.
Yeah, right.
Alright.
Just have
What's
a
easiest
file.
for you, Cheryl?
Yeah,
Is that okay?
That's fine. We could have
And
a
I don't
running
think
Google
there's-
doc in the
Oh, we
board
could- we
folder, so you
absolutely
just have
could.
That one had already been flagged
Yeah.
before.
That's a
sending
good
that,
idea
so.
too.
I don't think there's going to be tons in the bylaws themselves.
No.
Not in that. There's a lot to look at. I don't think there's going to be tons of suggested changes in that arena.
Okay.
Cheryl, you can tell Tammy, you give her the right to reserve to say, stop.
Yes.
Enough.
No, I do think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
putting a
Give her the
Google
white flag to raise.
Right.
Doc that and I'll just add to it, and that anybody can go on and look and see if it's already been added to the list. That I think that
So
would work.
just for clarification, what are we sending to her?
Any of the policies, the bylaws that we think need to be touched, need to be revised,
Yeah.
updated.
Okay, because I thought that's what we we're going to do in our work session, to have a discussion about those changes.
Well,
And then they
we
would
have a
go.
list.
This allows her to pull them so that we can discuss them. Like if there's,
No, but I think you're right, Tony. I think what we talked about in the work session from the last work session was it would come, you would discuss, decide which ones it would get sent to Cheryl, and then she would pull from there. I think that now that you said
That's
that,
that's how I remember it being, because that way she's not sitting there pulling all these things out when half of them may not have to even get pulled out.
I see. I guess I was thinking of it the opposite, that if she pulled them, then we'd know were there even options or anything that could be changed.
We would have that information at our work session when we discussed them.
I see it both ways.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't want you doing
Right.
more work.
Which way would you prefer, Cheryl? Because I see it both ways too.
Well, I'm just saying, there's a lot of things she won't know what to, like, she can't make the tweaks or,
No, she wouldn't make the
Or
tweaks. She
e-
would just pull the original policy from Neola, what it said, because a lot of Neola's policies have options in them.
oh, I see
Because
what
if
you're
you
saying.
said, I think we need to look, if you said you recognize that
Right.
it needed to be looked at, Tony, then she would pull that one.
Yeah.
But many of us might not even
Got it.
say that about a particular
I
aspect.
got it.
And then she could say, oh, this is it. There are no
This-
choices.
Yeah.
So then there's not even really anything to take
No.
policy.
And
committee.
Michigan law says we have to have this policy.
So no
Okay.
discussion on those.
Yeah. But then we'd all know that at our work session because,
Okay.
okay. So we'll add them to a Google Doc. Then we'll bring them all to the work session, discuss them. And if they need tweaks, we have our discussion, then they go to the subcommittee for tweaks. Okay.
And again, I guess I would say if this seems to be getting to, I don't think it will. I'm with
Mm-mm.
Becky. I don't think there will be a ridiculous number. But if
Mhm.
for some reason it is getting that way, please
Mhm.
communicate with us that
Mhm.
maybe we need to relook at.
How many
Yes.
were?
Gets out of hand.
Yeah. Yes, we do not want to create a ton of work for you.
All right. Anything else? Moving on to reports. Superintendent's report.
Yeah, so next week we have parent-teacher conferences that are coming up since the end of the first quarter is this Friday. This is a change from what we've done in years past, so it'll be nice to see if this creates even better discussion between parents and teachers now that we're to the end of a quarter, kind of as a natural breaking point. Along with that, we have our staff recognition lunch will be on next Tuesday. For those of you who can attend that, we have a number of staff members who have put in a lot of years of service here that we get to recognize. So that's always a really a nice time of year to do that. Also on Tuesday is November 5th, so it's election day. So it doesn't matter how you vote, but get out and vote. Also, this past week, we had the Academic Excellence Awards at the high school. I know a number of you were there. Awesome to see. We had 152 students being recognized. And to be recognized for that award, you have to have a 3.7 cumulative GPA for the school year with no grade lower than a B. So that's a pretty high standard. And to have 152 students who were recognized was awesome. Mr. Markle did a great job leading that ceremony. Marching band is headed to state this coming weekend. So that is really exciting. The show, they just keep getting better and better. Watching them on Friday night at the game, just again, every time I see it, it's an even better show. So both Jennifer Glukowski and Jacob Blaylock have done a nice job leading that. And we also have our football team is in the playoffs. We will be headed to Harper Creek and Battle Creek this Friday. So a nice job with Coach Purley and his team to get us there for that. And then volleyball districts are coming up next week. We do have one of our cross-country runners will also be headed to state. George, I believe, right, is headed to state. So that's exciting and a big honor. So lots of really positive student stuff, both academically and athletically going on. This week in district, we have a safety assessment starting tomorrow. Over the next 2 days, they'll be going to all of our buildings. I think we already know what they're going to find, a lot of the projects that we are in process of doing, but it will be nice to have that kind of very focused report for us to go through and make sure that we're on the right track and what we're doing.
Do you know when they'll have that report done?
So I'm trying to remember. I don't know how many schools they have going on right now. I know a lot of the schools happened a couple of years ago. I think it took over a month for us to get the report in my previous district, but I'm not sure just how many they have on their plate right now. So a few years ago, Manny, our emergency manager, came out and did an assessment. He focused a lot on the outside of our buildings. SEC, when they come in, really does a lot of focus on our policies, procedures, and inside of the building. So they'll be talking to admin and staff in each of the buildings, doing a walkthrough of each of the buildings. They're even going over to the former church property that will give us some ideas there as we're looking at designing that building as well. So again, they're all recommendations, but once we have those, we'll share them out with all of you and see how they align with where we're headed as well, too, safety-wise. And then thinking of safety, we held our first parent university this past month. So just a big thank you to our Alice trainers who set all of that up. So Mr. Zebra, Mr. Dandrin, Laura Blaylock, Ashley Stein, and then Officer Asseray are our Alice trainers, and they did a nice job presenting on that. We got a lot of good comments and questions from the parents and community members who came. And then we've also had some good feedback from staff and administration on some places to go back and review and just make sure our staff feel really comfortable with that, since it is a big change of switching to what we've had, to then really empowering staff, but letting them know that, it's okay for them to make those decisions, and then we as a district support them and also hold the liability for them. So just reassuring them, because change is hard when something's been ingrained in you for the last 15, 20 years. But the parent university was great. There was just a small group, but really good comments and feedback of things to think about. So looking forward to other parent universities moving forward on different topics as well, too. So that is all I have.
Sounds good. Are there any subcommittee reports?
So we had the finance meeting tonight, and so we'll be putting together the notes per our regular template. We'll send those out to the board. We mainly went over the fund balance and differences there and what we can expect. So we'll send those notes out.
And the subcommittee for the new board member orientation, we met prior to our last meeting.
Yep.
And you've seen some of that's been passed along to you guys.
Yep.
Forgot that one.
I know, it was so long ago.
Seems like a long time ago.
Moving on to comments from the audience. Seeing no volunteers, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Support.
Is there any discussion regarding that? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
You do a great job with that report. You do the
I got
report,
it
it's
too.
good.
Oh, thank you for checking me now. You have a blue pen, girl?
I mean, it's pretty cut and dry, but I mean,
Only two more for you, right?
I'll send it to you.
Yeah. I know.